Yo guys, welcome to my no nonsense tier list video. Actually, this is my first tier list video that I'm doing. I'm not saying it's perfect. It's just my take on World versus World out on the July patch. I believe it was the 15th. The patch came out. Um, there is going to be a lot of controversy in the picks. Respect that. So obviously save that. Chuck that in the comments. Whether you think what's good, what's not good. Let's go into it. So obviously we had the World versus World event recently, which obviously saw a lot of players come into the game mode, which is great for the game mode. However, I do think what would be great is if we basically got more videos out there in terms of what commanders, what other players would like to see other players start to bring to the game mode. The first major issue I would say would be the builds, what people are playing. Obviously they've been doing raids to get legendary armor, possibly PvP. So maybe they don't even have builds. They're just coming to World versus World. Just trying to get into the game mode, and they, essentially fall in love with the game mode, which I did quite some time ago. So in terms of builds, I would recommend going to websites like Snowcrows, as that's I think probably the most up to date one, or the one which my teapot does, which is hardstuck.dgg. Meta Battle used to be updated all the time, but I don't think it's updated that regularly anymore. Obviously, all the best builds are on there. Obviously, this is just my take on the meta and just my tier list. To get builds, there is a vendor in World versus Worlds, for example, EPG. He is on the left hand side in the green corner, just in the final building on the left hand side. He's a robot called TEID. You can buy gear from him for silver, maybe a little like 1 gold, depending on maybe the item. Possibly chest piece is probably 1 gold, and currency badges of honor. Badges of honor are easily obtainable from World versus World just by playing the game mode. You don't need to do anything special to get them. Okay, so without further ado, guys, let's kick this off. Okay, so we'll just start off going from no up. Core Thief doesn't bring any utility. Can do big staff damage, mainly for 10 versus 10 or 15 versus 15, not for the 50 versus 50 game mode, which a lot of players are playing now. Which in my personal opinion is quite sad and quite boring. A lot of players do switch off in that game mode, and a lot of people die just for no real reason, really. Core Thief, very much the same, doesn't bring anything. Deadeye doesn't bring anything. Antiquary doesn't bring anything. Core Engineer, nothing, garbage. Core Elementalist, nothing, garbage. Core Rev, the same, nothing, garbage. Core Mesmer, garbage, doesn't bring anything. I think that's basically anything. Gale Shot, on paper, maybe could have been good if there wasn't so much projectile hate, but doesn't really bring anything. You could take Spirit, but not really worth it when there's other classes that would be way better in terms of taking the Spirit, in terms of resing. Not worth taking. Core Guardian, there was a DPS build, Burnbrand sort of build going around, which there's just classes that are just way better. Excuse me, in terms of a DPS. So probably quite a few elementalists are probably gonna not like me for this. Evoker, padding, catalyst, padding could be paid as a support, both of them, but you're not really doing anything what other classes don't do. Weaver, much the same, doesn't really do anything, not really that great. Core Warrior, not worth taking. Was a pretty good DPS. It's just not worth taking it anymore. Herald, support, power, just it's just not worth taking. Mirage, that was obviously heavily nerfed. You can do dodge, you can spam the ambush skill or the Greatsword 1 to do sort of a lot of laser beam damage. Just not worth taking. Oak Ranger, obviously garbage. No worth taking that. Willbender, not worth taking. Garbage. Was good for when it came out, maybe, but it's just not really worth taking. Moving on, I think that's probably it. Scourge. I see Scourge is top end of here as a power Scourge. Obviously, the Scourge was meta for a very, very long time. Probably just fell out of sort of everything at the moment. Not really valuable in aspects. Barrier got nerfed. DPS isn't really great. Other classes strip better, you know, on the Necro spec itself. Moving on. Oh, we got the anime class. Yeah, I'm not even going to talk about that. Just accidentally missed that off. So yeah, that's pretty garbage. Not worth. What else is not worth taking? Yeah, Soul Beast, just not worth it. Absolutely rubbish. Virtuoso, not worth it anymore. Lots of projectile hate, so it's just not. It's not great. Chronomancer, very much not worth it as well. Troubadour is just way better. Mechanist, garbage. Yeah, I guess we are on to E8 here. Moving for actually, yeah, guess 80 here, yeah, for the 50 versus 50 Zerg fights. Moving forward, then, we have DH. So we'll essentially go into a bit more detail then now as we're moving on to the A tier. I'll put the A tier in order where I think they would probably be most impactful. DH, obviously great if the enemy is very much a W Zerg, but I would personally want DHs in every party to actually have an impact. If you're just having one DH, not really much point. There's way better DPS than DH, but you'd want one in every party. So when the enemy runs into them, they're just going to hit the traps, and you know you're essentially going to kill quite a lot of players with that. Moving on, Conduit, probably slightly better than DH. Not bad damage. Seen some quite a few players on enemy this week trying to run like spear conduit DPS because it does have like a high burst. Untamed, probably the worst DPS at the moment. Got heavily nerfed. Can do strips, can do DPS. You could take spirit on it, but not really much point. Heavily destroyed. Shame, really, as it's probably the best, or was the best Ranger DPS that there was. Moving on, Tempest. You're not really going to take a Tempest. Maybe an open tag, you know, for support or DPS. Not really too much else to say. It's got decent healing, decent cleansing. You know, if that's all there is for it, a healer or cleanser, then I guess you could take it. Moving on, Spectre. It's mainly like it can do party-wide barrier, but there's just better supports. You know, why take a Spectre when you could have a Druid? You know, it's just better. Moving on, Paragon. Got decent utility with the buffs, with the chance, with the banner. but there's just better supports. There's just no need. Hollow Smith, um, good burst damage. Um, Not really. I don't really think it got nerfed pretty hard. It's just not. There's just better classes out there. Support Scrapper, um, probably probably out. Not just outgoated, but I've been outgoated for a while, just because like the utility is good on it, because you know you've got the conditions to boons. Obviously you've got stab. Um, Healing is insane on it. It did get nerfed, I believe, quite a few times recently, but nobody's really playing Scrapper anymore, like healing or power. So it's just yeah, just no point. Uh, Vindicator, crazy healing. It's only, I would say it's only really an A tier because it just doesn't really cleanse. There's no res potential. There's just no real reason to take it. Maybe you could have one in the group just to just to keep the healing topped off for everybody, just with the dodge, the massive healing dodge. Moving on, Ritualist was meta when it came out for quite some time. Obviously has been nerfed. It's got range strips, which is obviously quite good. It's a bit more of a safe sort of necromancer. Berserker, I would say, would be here. Lots of burst damage. You've got the banner. You could do the Chinese build. So you've obviously ranged with the longbow. You could do greatsword, axe, greatsword, sword axe for for the spinning DPS. But if you're not getting melee, it's useless. Spellbreaker got kind of a nerf, I guess, with the F1, so it's kind of hard to say whether that's goated or A tier. I'm probably going to say that's top A tier. I've always liked Spellbreaker. That's just my opinion, but I'd say it's between these two. If we had to put in, probably add another row just to. Oh, I kind of fucked that up. Oh god, we definitely fucked that up. Delete. Delete. Okay, yeah. Put Spellbreaker here. Moving on, I'd probably say a hobby is probably the same. As the support one is still great. I know people have been playing the DPS one just to give the boons, but I think if you're gonna play hobby as a support, you'd basically losing DPS by doing that. Necro, in my opinion, isn't a DPS. I know a lot of people say, "Oh, Necromancer is a DPS. It's good, does do DPS." But if Necromancer's top DPS, then there's a problem with the DPS. So it's just no. Yeah, it's just not a DPS. It's a stripping class. Amalgam, A tier, probably slightly worse than Berserker in my opinion. Berserker has crazy burst if you get the F1s off. S tier, I'd probably say all these are S tier, honestly. So going a bit further into detail then, so you've got Druids, probably been the GOAT for quite a few patches now. You've got the res on the ultimate, so the spirit res. So I believe it was five. I think it was 10 at one point, and then it went to 5. Then I think it has gone down to 3, I believe. But with the double sort of slam on the spirits, you can actually get 6 people up. With the slam to the ground twice. So druids definitely goated. Obviously, it's quite easy to get as well. You only need one of the expansion packs, just the Heart of Thorns. Moving on, core Necro, great range strips, very easy to play. You don't even need any expansion packs to play that. Probably easiest way to play that So commander's going to call obviously range pressure. So you've got 900 range on the shrouds, so you can go shroud 2. Then when you're pushing in, do shroud 4 just to do crazy DPS. Then shroud 2 again, come out. Obviously the wells, well of corruption. You may do the blindness well. You could do the suffering well for more damage. Great spec can do create crazy strips. And obviously it's nuts because it's a core spec, right? So you don't, as I said, you don't need to have any of the expansion packs. Reaper, I think Reaper probably slightly better than the core Necro just because it does strip that little bit more. The only downside to Reaper is you have to be melee. If the commander's not pushing melee, then a lot of your damage is wasted. So that's kind of oof. Luminary. Probably these two are probably the same. The great thing about Luminary, I feel like, is it's great for new players as a sort of gateway into Firebrand. A lot of people complain that Firebrand's like a hard class to play because it's got a lot of buttons. It's a bit like the Elementalist. Like there's a lot of things that you need to manage. So I feel like that's that good middle ground. It gives almost everything what Firebrand to gives. Obviously, I mean it doesn't have the terms, but you have the sort of like the lantern skills. Obviously, the elite skills different from the Firebrand. We have Luminary still great classes. Obviously, the two builds that you can play. You do the standard support Luminary, or you can do the Valor Luminary. So I believe the Valor one gives you more cleansing, but the Valor one is probably more sort of less played, if that makes sense. So the Valor one is probably about here versus the standard support Luminary. Moving on, so this is probably going to cause a lot of controversy. I would personally say that the Renegade is definitely goated. If people play it right and play a decent build on it. If people are interested, I could put the Renegade build as a link below in the description if people are interested, or maybe just in the comments. It brings a lot of utility. You've got the Writ of the Grey Dwarf on the elite skill, so 50% damage reduction. You could bring roads, you can bring strips. Obviously, it doesn't have a res, but you wouldn't play res on a DPS. You've got a lot of CC daisies, lots of sort of spike damage. You can actually put the heroes on top of walls. A lot of people would just want an elementalist or ranger to put that pressure on walls, but you can actually do that with Renegade, believe it or not. So that's kind of nice as well. Obviously, great burst damage. Don't play that as a Condi. Then the most important classes, I would probably say. So where you would put them in order of, sort of what is better than the other. Tricky one. Troubadour, I would say, is easier to play and is great for like a lot of squads. Definitely underrated as a class. Not that many people are playing it for some strange reason. You've got that party-wide invulnerability. Yes, invulnerability for a few seconds, which would be massive for going into melee. Just to allow your Reaper or your Renegade to get that burst damage off to create the downs. You've got Veil, you've got Portal. Definitely a goated class. I'd say very underrated, very underplayed right now. The GOAT, the ultimate GOAT, in my opinion. Firebrand brings basically every boon in the game. Obviously not quickness or alacrity, because they have does bring quickness, sorry, but it's just there's no alacrity. Obviously it's a little bit of quickness. I don't know whether ArenaNet will decide to remove that. Um, in terms of what you would lead on in both of those classes, you can lead on them both. I wouldn't recommend leading on anything else because uh, I feel like you're just griefing if you want to lead on anything else. But I would personally say Firebrand is like the goated class out of all the sort of classes for World versus World. So that's probably your where I would say sort of the classes would be. Um, just a side note, I guess, um, would be like scouting. What people would play for scouting classes. Um, I'd recommend sort of like Willbender. Any thief class is great for scouting. You've obviously got a lot of invisibility. You know, you can essentially hide, burst somebody down. Same for like Virtuoso, really great for scouting. Classes that might not be so great for scouting would be something like Core Necro because you can't really escape. I mean, yes, you could. I guess you could take the Worm Spectral Walk, but it's better to play something that's fast that can. You're very mobile. You can get away really fast. Um, you could do a few of the other Mesmer specs, but I would say Virtuoso just because you've got that massive burst. Willbender for speed, you've got quick burst that you could do. Maybe Harbinger, but nah, it's kind of not really worth it, sort of scouting wise. But yeah, if anyone did have any questions, guys, feel free to drop a comment. Just to reiterate, this is just my sort of speedy, no nonsense tier list. Yeah, it's not gospel. It's not set in stone. This will change, with the patches that come out. But that's just my take on the current status of the game. As I said, any questions, let me know. My name is Sid. Hope to see you in the game. Take it easy, guys. Have a good night. Peace.